as a kid from the 80s, I think I was 9 in 1986. The reason why I know about this movie is simply because Iron Maiden, man.
Yeah,
Iron Maiden.
It's going to be a rock opera.
That's the only reason I know about this movie, of course, because Iron Maiden has a song with the same title.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I saw a very captivating video on YouTube. Someone took a montage from this movie and actually edited it to the song, so it plays during the running scenes. I thought that was pretty cool. But when you mentioned this movie to me, I actually asked you if it was a real movie. Because I'd never heard of the movie. I'd heard of the Iron Maiden song, but I didn't know the full title of it so much because it's not really brought up very often. But I actually thought you were joking with me, messing with me, and it's not. It's a movie. So.
All right, today we're going to talk about one of the last movies of the kitchen sink realism.
Yeah, so The Loneliness of a Long Distance Runner. Lace your shoes up and let's get started. And welcome back to the show. I'm one of your hosts, Kyle Goethe from GoatFilmReviews.com.
I'm Nick from the St. Paul Filmcast. Thanks again for finding us. Thanks for watching. And for our loyal fans, thank you for continued support the show. You can follow the show on Twitter and on Instagram. We do have a Patreon. Check that out for some great options. Today we're going to talk about one of the last movies of the kitchen sink realism of the Angry Young Men series from Britain's New Wave. We're going to talk about the loneliness of the long distance runner.
Yeah, so when rebellious young thief Colin Smith is sent to a borstal for reforming, his natural abilities as a long distance runner help him to rise in popularity with the reformatory governor. Colin uses his time as a runner to look back at what got him to this point as he comes to terms with being used for his skills.
All right, so a little fun fact. The director, Tony Richardson, married Vanessa Redgrave. Michael Redgrave is in the movie, the older man. And they had a kid, Natasha Richardson. And she's the one that married Liam Neeson. And she was the one that hit her head on the ski slopes and had a cerebral hemorrhage in her. And then she passed away. So it's almost like this is a little bit of, I wouldn't say like film royalty because they kind of got into the way by Working Man, but I just wanted that's a cute little fact about this movie.
It is kind of a royalty. I'm not sure what kind of royalty, but it's
right,
definitely there.
Yeah.
So,
if you didn't know about the Angry Young Man or the kitchen sink realism, this is one of the staples. This is almost like you would say Detour is like very film noirist. This is very much like Angry Young Man. Tony Richardson was one of the first movies was looking back in anger.
Okay.
This is the movie before he won Best Director and Best Picture for Tom Jones in 1963 as well. So first time seeing for this guy.
First time for me. I was aware of Alan Silito, who was one of the Angry Young Men who wrote the short story and the screenplay for the film that's based on. So let me just start by saying I really like the framing device of the running. I really like the way in which that is like used to tell his flashbacks and his backstory in that world. That was the part that won me.
They had to put him like on a cart, right?
I think so, yeah. And it would have been tough because, again, like when you're long distance, you're not on a paved road so much.
No.
So making it not completely shaky cam and difficult was probably pretty tough, especially because it does appear that this movie's pretty low budget. There's not a lot really going on where there's terms of like big.
I wouldn't be surprised if the Bordeaux that they found was an abandoned place.
Yeah.
They just found it.
So they probably just found an abandoned school and just put a bunch of youngsters in there. I really like Tom Courtenay as Colin Smith. I think he's the most engaging performance in the film. He's the one who I connected with the most because he is our central character, so I should connect with him.
Yeah.
But I think he's the best performance in the movie because he can do a lot during those action scenes of him running where you get everything you need to get from what his character's thinking about. You know?
Yeah. So if you didn't know, the Bordeaux's for a juvenile delinquent. So if you get a kid and you get arrested, you get sent to this almost like a boarding house. You live there as well to straighten you up, and then you can participate in extracurricular activities to kind of be normal, get back into society. And then they realize that this guy has a talent for running. And he says right away, my family, running is the tool that we use in my family, but we don't use it for sport. We just run from our crimes and get away from the cops. And
it's an interesting way where he says that the runner in the film, like him as a character, when he goes and uses this skill to kind of like open his mind to think his thoughts and kind of work his mind around something, he ends up lonelier at the end. Yeah. I didn't feel that when I go for runs because I do the same thing. When I'm stressed out, when I'm having a bad day, I will hop on the road. I'll hop on our treadmill at our house and just kind of like run until my mind can work through what it's doing. And I always feel very differently at the end than he does. He kind of feels almost like a lesser person at the end, or like a more kind of mentally fractured. Mine's kind of healed.
But the activity is counterproductive, because when he runs, he remembers, he's just thinking about all the stuff he did back then, and then he gets his bearings back. Screw the system.
Yeah, maybe it's because I've done less crime. Maybe that's why I feel differently. Is that I'm being alone with my thoughts?
You didn't
doesn't
steal
feel that way.
money from a bakery and put it in a flower pot.
No, when I'm running, I think about embarrassing things I did when I was younger, but that's about the extent of it.
So yeah, because it's counterproductive. You think that, all right, you have a skill and you like to run, let's put you on the the cross country team or whatever, and then you can compete. But when he runs, he's going back to like, oh, I remember this, and I remember my friends, and I remember my love interests, and yeah, I'm in part of the system now, and I don't want to be. And it's almost like he's, like we always say, looking for his authentic self as he's running. Yeah,
he's consistently too also being used for his skill, being kind of like
used, right?
He's not getting anything out of this relationship. They keep telling him like, hey, if you do really well at this, we might have a career in mind for you. Like, it's this thing where we have a thing to use you for. He's the one who's gifted, but it's not about that. Michael Redgrave's character, the governor, is saying like, well, I can use him so we can finally beat the other school.
Yes.
Well, what's he going to get out of this?
Yeah.
He's not getting anything. It's another case of, again, like the big man is using the poor to help him move forward in his own life. But Colin's not going to get anything out of the situation. He's not going to evolve. And I think that's what kind of drives his central question of, how do I complete this race? How do I really do something that's going to be successful for me? And whether or not he actually gains success can be interpreted, I guess.
And right, because it's not very flashy. It's very bland. That's the intent of these series. It's not supposed to be very clever. It's supposed to be grim, dark, grimy, almost very low class. But it does have a flashy point of editing where they use the stars.
Yeah.
Of going back.
Well, that was Anthony Gibbs, who he's like one of the few people in the crew that I really recognize, because he had done Dune. The
yes, he did Dune.
He also did Fiddler on the Roof. So he's got a connective tissue with kind of like flashing up things that maybe weren't shot to be flashy. He can really kind of maneuver around and put together puzzles quite well.
So this series, the British New Wave, was very much this focal point of angry young men. Where we in France, we have the French New Wave, which is very exploratory of what filmmaking process is, and take it out in the streets, and very much not on the studio set, and using old techniques of color and really of almost free flowing camera work. And I think here you do a lot of stiff camera work to show how mundane and druggery this is. They don't really do clever camera work in this, other than following him doing the running.
Yeah,
but it's pretty much set the camera and go.
Yeah, set it up and just kind of. We'll get to it.
Let's break out of this almost, right? Yeah.
And that's kind of for me where I felt a little bit of I felt styleless in a movie that could have not been flashy so much, but given me a little bit of.
Is that subtraction of style for style's sake?
Yeah. Yeah. And I thought that I didn't really move forward with the narrative in that way, because I was more interested in, like I said, his time at the home, as opposed to the flashbacks. It just didn't do much for me. I didn't really connect with what he was struggling through. I liked the kind of ragtag boys that he was spending his time with at the school. I liked that he was being used for his skill. That's the part of the narrative that worked for me. Every time we got into flashbacks, it kind of lost me. I knew what they were trying to do, it just didn't do it for me.
And I think that's one of my, if I had a criticism, it's we can only spend a few seconds. Why don't we just do a few seconds of just him and that girl in the grass?
We get enough out of that. And the film isn't overly long, but it's not short either. No. I think you could have had a really tight 80 to 85 minutes. Chop out some of that stuff, just trim. Because I think a lot of it's important information, but we spend so much time there that I don't know if that works as well for me as just get back to the main source.
Right, so in the beginning of the movie, they're in the bus, and then you're supposed to develop the characters in the bus, but that takes a long time. In fact, you even pause it by the tree, the kids are doing the yard work, and then the tree falls down, and someone's like, let's get there, and then damn, we're not getting there, but why do we have to get there in the
yeah. I felt like one of those kids on a car ride who's like, are we there yet? Are we there yet? Are we getting there? Because I think
it's almost like you sent to prison and the bus is going, and then all of a sudden there's a traffic jam, and you're like, but you still
want the prison.
But you still go to prison, right?
When you realize that you want the prison more than the not going to prison. I did like that the film felt very documentarian. I like that about the kind of lower budget stuff. I just wish that there was I don't need a style. I just needed it to not feel like it was intentionally styleless, because it just felt very much like, I don't know, it just felt like I was lost looking
almost
for
home
white
video-esque.
hair.
Almost home video-esque.
And so the style can be that, but it didn't feel like that was intentional either.
When I had to write a paper for film class, I cite this movie as an evolutionary step to how we get Fight Club. I think if you enjoy Fight Club, you understand the roots of where this comes from, and from British kitchen sink realism, you will get where Fight Club comes from.
Oh yeah.
I think if you've seen this movie now, you understand the angry man kind of fighting the system, buck it out. Right.
It's an anarchist movie with a very light. It's anarchist light, if you will. It's
Very
light,
light, yeah.
Diet Coke anarchist. Where it's there, we get what he's doing, and I like that there is the central question of him too, like how, because we don't really spend a lot of time. It's weird to say we don't spend time in his mind. We don't know what he's thinking. We know what he's remembering.
Right.
But we don't know what he's really pondering through.
I think
the decision he's trying to make.
I think it's all building up to the ending. Like, are you going to do this?
Yeah.
Are you going to just fill into the system and just be part of it, or are you going to challenge it and become your authentic self?
And what I do think is most interesting about the film is that I would have been okay with either ending. Like with either choice he made, I would have found to be an interesting story choice. Because I don't think either one is inherently wrong. It's just a question of, like, you do question yourself, is he going to make the choice to let himself be used, or is he going to break the cycle?
Because in the film, he's like, all the other people are like, come on through. And it's hard to tell difference between an award-winning Tony Richardson, the director. I would have Courtney stand right next to Michael Redgrave and just stand and watch his reactions as everybody runs past him.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I guess so, yeah.
It's almost like a very fitting, like, yeah.
Because he is essentially, he's treated almost like a dog on a leash at the beginning. And it's interesting that when he is given that more freedom, the treat that he is given is that you can run outside the school, because we know you'll come back, because we have like what you need here. And he's almost like he's a carrot on a stick kind of a thing, where it's like we can release you for a little bit, and he goes out and he returns home because he's starting to break. He's starting to realize that he is going to be part of this cycle. Yeah. And so having him be allowed all these the freedoms of literally being free to run, and he still returns to this place where he is.
And it's counterproductive, because like, let's get some exercise and show off your skills, but then he retains what he was before he got there. And I'm going to stick to that.
Yeah, exactly. So it's frustrating, because you wish he could make the right call, but he does kind of sit in that question of, again, not knowing what he's thinking. You wonder which way he's actually going to go at the end.
Yeah. So overall, I think it's another stepping stone, because this is late in the kitchen sink realism. It's one of the last pictures, and then, like I said, it's one of the overall staples. And I think it'd be interesting if we probably go back and look at some other ones, like looking back at Anger, which kind of the catalyst for it. I think if you like Fight Club, or like Chuck Palahniuk's books, or that kind of David Fincher, you'll see where this comes from.
Oh yeah,
we're a single angry dude. I mean, even like The Game.
I was surprised that Tom Courtenay didn't appear in a Fincher film or something like that. I almost had to check, because he had this feeling like maybe he was a background guy somewhere.
But it's very the musical score is very depressing. It's not uplifting. It's very much you're trapped in this.
But I think even the film is depressing. I mean, you could make the claim that you found parts of it comedic. I could believe that. I didn't find it comedic. I found it depressing because the comedy bits are depressing inherently. Where they are having a laugh, but then they're also like, yeah, we're trapped here.
Right. Yeah. You get where Black Sabbath came from. The Black Sabbath, the band, came from this kind of environment. Oh yeah. Where there's really no outlet. Well, we're just singing nasty music.
That's maybe the big thing that comes out of the angry young men idealized, is that they themselves laid the groundwork for a lot of the breaking away that would come.
Right.
You even think of I know
like
this is a very current musical reference, but the lead singer from Disturbed, his dad was a pastor. So that breaking away from the generation above, how we always try to basically do the exact opposite in a lot of ways from the generation before us. That was almost like the Angry Young Men gave the ability, like, yes, it's okay to not fit into this cycle and this mold. It's okay to break the mold, and that's kind of what they're pushing for here.
But it's also you're right, talk about other artworks. This is another stepping stone of how rock and roll kind of really flourished in Britain in the mid '60s. Because this came out in, I think, '62. This is '62, and this is almost a couple of years we get the Beatles.
Yeah.
And so you
We get Tom Jones in a
and then
couple
we get
years.
Tom Jones, and we get the Rolling Stones and all that stuff. So you get a lot of this rebellious music coming up, probably derived in the start as a catalyst, is these kind of films.
Yeah, it was like the not the first, but like the latest in the line of, you know, what are these young whippersnappers doing, kind of a thing.
And it was like subcurrent.
Mhm.
It's a subcurrent that people like, oh, the kids are making movies, and I don't think they were really appreciated. They're far more appreciated now, but there's almost like throwaway almost when they came out, and they were treated like throwaway almost. And I think that's another step that's almost very punk.
Mhm.
Make this movie, then throw it in the trash, and that's where it deserves.
Well, what is that whole phrasing? Like you're finally old when you don't like the music on the radio anymore. Like that's when you hit that argument.
I came
of like,
here and
I'm
I
finally out
tried
of
to
it.
listen to the radio, and it's like, let's listen to new stuff because and they're like, what is this?
Yeah.
It's probably 10 years old.
Fair enough. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, for me, it was a movie that I appreciate. I didn't really jive with it. I thought it was okay.
I think it's generational.
Yeah.
I think Fight Club speaks to me far more than it does to you because I was in college.
Fight Club speaks to
Yeah, but it's but like people that were went to college in 1968, Graduate speaks to them far more than anybody. And these movies in the 50s and the late 50s, 60s speak to kids from Britain.
Yeah, it's part of an important set of movies. It just didn't really reach out and grab me and pull me in, and it's doing a lot of things that I think were fully developed better later on.
But it's such a juvenile thing to watch the grown up on TV and you mute it and then you do stupid noises.
I mean,
that's so high school, right? Right, that's so high school, but that's the point of them.
We come from Mystery Science Theater land in Minnesota here, so
you
know about that.
Yeah, you make your own voices, but that's the whole point of the movie is thumbing your nose at the establishment.
Yeah,
and that's where rock and roll comes from.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a short and fast movie.
Yeah, and it's available. I mean, you can find it on YouTube. You can find it all over the place. It's a pretty accessible film. And I think,
of course, Iron Maiden is going to make a song about this.
Yeah, if you've ever seen the movie, go check out that music video that the guy did online, the Iron Maiden music video with that, because it's a really cool way to like showcase that generational piece of like Iron Maiden being based on the short story as much as this film is based on the short story with that song, and it's kind of a cool like interplay that you get. But definitely I think the movie's worth checking out. It just didn't really work for me. But we want to know what you thought.
But I think it's very important if you want to talk about styles and a footnote that you have to understand that this was a very established genre that came out. Then it's a very important work to realize. I know there's gonna be some points in the movie where I'm kind of lulled.
Yeah,
where it's like let's pick up the speed, but maybe that's just my impatience of sometimes watching movies.
I think that's because Tom Courtenay is the only kid in this group that I really cared about. Like I cared about his interactions with the others, but I didn't care about the others.
Right.
Yeah. So let us know what you thought about The Loneliness of the Long Distance Runner down below. It's a different movie than we've talked about with most of our other 150 episodes. But I think it can have a lot of people. Some will love it, some will hate it.
And I think it's if you want to be a part of the film cinematic history, you want to watch movies. This is a footnote that you have to see.
Yeah, it's a check on the list.
It's one of those.
You may love it, you may adore it, you may not.
Also, She-Wolf. Yeah, I have to check that out.
Yeah, so let us know what you thought down below, and while you're down there as well, is there another film in they're kind of like the kitchen sink realism
looking
world
back
that
in
we should be
anger,
looking
right?
at?
Yeah.
Let us know down below what you thought about this movie, and while you're down there too, check out those links that Nick mentioned before, the Twitter, the Instagram.
I can't believe it's
yeah, and join that Patreon too, because I'll tell you right now that sacrificing 1 cup of coffee, because you could use a little less coffee in your life. Maybe you could too. No. But if you sacrifice 1 caribou every single month, you could join the Patreon for pretty cheap, and you could also then help independent content creators like ourselves by picking some of the different films we're going to talk about on the show. We look forward to hearing from you, and you can check out all my film reviews at goatfilmreviews.com.
Nick from the St. Paul Filmcast, a podcast where you can find anywhere on the internet. And I don't know, if they did a movie about you, would it be The Loneliness of the Treadmill Runner? Or
I mean, if I can be outside, I'll be outside. But I think it's a little lonely. I'm staring.
I think nowadays you put it in like the gym and the loneliness of the treadmill.
Loneliness of the all-purpose gym.
All-purpose gym, yeah. The loneliness of the CrossFit dude.
Yeah. So look for our upcoming remake of the film coming to cinemas later next century.